Well, this is it. The end of Clone Wars. And then peace reigned in the galaxy forever. I do like how Yoda actually does the smart thing with R2. Listen, if I'm not back in 3 days, go get some help. And of course, the Sith ghost things are all like super snake things. We even get to see Darth Bane. And for once, he actually looks really cool, and he's voiced by Mark Hamill, which really adds to it. That was actually a really good scene. And I like the little weaving of the lore into that. Just, yes, I did this, and that's why you come to me now. And Yoda's just like, yeah, I'm not really here for you. Sorry. Bye. There's also this really nice line. Well, where Yoda says, captivated by the physical, the Sith are. And the guy's response to that is, what else is there? An interesting little insight into one of the core philosophical differences between Jedi and Sith. And, of course, something I've brought up many, many times, the difference between the intangible and the tangible. I also like how, once again, Palpatine is dynamic and recognizes that not only is Yoda now, vulnerable, but he didn't plan it. In fact, he has no idea what Yoda's doing on Korriban. Excuse me, Moraband. And so he's just like, well, let's take advantage of this. Dooku, here, let's go. And then, of course, the vision is surprisingly realistic, which I find interesting in its own right, because it's not like it's going to fool anybody, right? We know how things turn out. But Anakin does kill Dooku in basically the same manner that he does in the movie. And there's this duel between Sidious and Yoda, which is pretty much exactly how it should be. I also love how Yoda basically takes the whole thing as, yeah, no, this isn't real. I'm not actually going for this. But he does try very hard to learn Sidious's identity. It actually makes me, I mean, obviously, from a realistic perspective, they didn't want to put another render, but I'm surprised that Sidious was willing to show his own face in the robe and the vision, since that is him. I do like the idea of Yoda and Anakin as a team, in combat especially. One of them is very, let's go do something right now. It's something that Yoda even praised him for. And one of them is very, okay, I'll be willing to be patient and think things through. One of them is basically a mage, one of them is basically a warrior, and yet both of them are both fast and agile, and therefore capable of keeping up with each other. It's just some food for thought. Anyways, there's this nice bit where Palpatine says, we have failed to break Yoda, and it's probably one of the few times he sounds actually disappointed. We will need more time to do that. Funnily enough, if I'm not mistaken, they never break Yoda. And, of course, that leads to the ending here, where Yoda has realized now the reality of the situation they're in. That if all these revelations had come, 10 years ago or whatever, none of this would have happened. But the war's already been fought. And this is one of the things I like about the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars itself was the trap. The moment the Jedi agreed to fight in the war, they'd lost. That was the moment the trap was sprung. It wasn't about the Separatists or the dark side or any other stuff. That was the trap, getting them pulled into this galactic conflict. They are now in the trap, and all they can do is try to endure it. And thus Yoda posits the idea of basically lateral thinking. We have been trying to match and defeat our opponent this entire time, and we have failed consistently. It is time to try and seek a different alternative by redefining victory, which leads, of course, to A New Hope, because that's the idea. Yoda is now going to be trying to push things in the direction of getting ready for the future trilogy. And Luke, pretty decent way to end the franchise, if I may say. I should say the show. Obviously, it isn't ended. We're getting 2 more seasons, and they always intended for there to be more seasons. It's just, this was kind of nice. There was a lot of nice references, a lot of love and display, and you can tell that people really do care about Star Wars. Of course they do. The only thing that bothered me was the whole Mystic thing. Final thoughts, since this is my final Clone Wars Mini-Nation, and at this point I'm not even sure there will ever be a full rumination on the Clone Wars series, because there's not a lot to talk about in a lot of these episodes. I have a feeling that if I actually sat down to do proper ruminations of this show, most of the episodes, my episodes of their episodes, would be in the 10-minute range at the high end, because there's just not a lot to talk about. I would also say this show is definitely, especially having re-gone through with analysis mode on, is definitely a net positive. There is some dreck in this show, and there's some things which are just, what? Like illogical actions and throwing continuity to the wind and characters acting completely out of character and childish writing. the idea of people, being stupid or not picking up on things and all that fun stuff, and a lot of inconsistency, even just within the show itself. But I think the good outweighs that. Ahsoka Tano and her character development, the presentation of Anakin Skywalker and his slow descent, the connection of Obi-Wan to several other characters, notably Anakin and Satine, the presentation of Palpatine, the presentation of Dooku, the inclusion of Hondo. I think that overall, at the end of the sixth season, the good outweighs the bad, and this is definitely a net positive. I'm glad we got this show, and I'm glad we got Rebels, which I still haven't seen. That'll be an interesting one to go through. But for now, I'll see you next time.